Good day, everyone. How are you all? Okay, I'm glad to hear that you're all doing good. So for today, we will be having a story, a Greek mythology entitled Cupid and Psyche. Are you all excited to have the story with me? Okay, so as an affirmation, may I hear a clap of your hands? Okay, that's great. Now, let's start. The myth of Cupid and Psyche is probably one of the best love stories in classical mythology. Cupid, son of Aphrodite, was a personification of intense love desire, and he was depicted throwing arrows to people in order to hit their heart and make them fall in love. Psyche, a beautiful maiden, personifies the human soul. In fact, she is the symbol of the soul purified by passions and misfortunes and who is, from now on, prepared to enjoy eternal happiness. In the story of Cupid and Psyche, we can see the perseverance of a man even when he is possessed by passion and the effort of a woman to overcome many obstacles in order to achieve the happiness of love. Come and let us discover the myth of Cupid and Psyche. Once upon a time, there was a king who had 3 wonderful daughters. The youngest, Psyche, was much more beautiful than her 2 sisters and looked like a goddess among mere mortals. The fame of its beauty had been spread throughout the whole kingdom, and men kept coming to her palace to admire and worship her. When people would see her, they used to say not even Aphrodite herself could compete Psyche. The more people were getting to know Psyche, the less would remember the goddess of love and beauty. The temples of Aphrodite were abandoned, her altars covered with cold ashes, and the sculptors would no longer make statues for her. All the honors reserved to her were attributed to a simple mortal girl. The goddess could not accept such a situation and required help from his son, Cupid. He told him in distress, "Use your power and make this little shameless girl to fall in love with the vilest and most despicable creature who has ever walked on earth." Cupid agreed to do so, but the moment he saw her, he himself felt his heart pierced by one of his own arrows. He couldn't make that charming maiden fall in love with a horrible creature, but also decided not to tell his mother. The horrible prophecy. Psyche, however, was feeling bad because not only she could not fall in love with someone bad, even more surprising, nobody seemed to really fall in love with her. Men were happy just to admire her. Then they passed by and married another girl. Her 2 sisters, though definitely less seductive, had held 2 lavish weddings, each with a king. Psyche was the most beautiful girl on earth, but she was sad and lonely, always admired but never really loved. It seemed that no one would want her as his wife, and this caused great anxiety and distress to her parents. That is when her father went to visit the Oracle of Delphi to ask Apollo for an advice on what to do to find a husband for Psyche. The prophecy of the god was terrible. Apollo decreed that Psyche, dressed in black, should be brought to the summit of a mountain and stay there alone. The husband that was assigned to her, a winged serpent, terrible and more powerful than the gods themselves, would come up and take her for his wife. No one could imagine the despair of the family and friends of Psyche. She was prepared for the hill as if she were to face her death, and with more cries than if they were to drive her to the tomb, they led the young lady to the hill. Desperately, they all departed, leaving Psyche to her fate, radiant and helpless, and they locked themselves in the palace to mourn her for the rest of their days. The beginning of a fairy tale. On the hill and in the dark, Psyche remained seated and waited. While she was shaking and crying in the quiet night, a silent breeze reached her. It was the fresh wind of Zephyr, the mildest of the winds. He felt that she was being raised. She was being taken into the air, over the rocky hill to a soft meadow full of flowers. He did his best to make her forget her pain and put her to sleep. She then woke up by the sound of clear steam, and when she opened her eyes, she faced an imposing and magnificent castle. It seemed destined to a god with gold columns, silver walls, and floors of inlaid precious stones. Absolute silence ruled. It seemed uninhabited, and Psyche approached cautiously to admire its splendors. She remained suspicious at the threshold, where she heard a noise but could not see anyone. However, she could clearly hear the words, "The house is for you. Come in and do not be afraid. Take a bath and we will immediately honor you with a great dinner." Never had she taken such a refreshing bath, nor tasted such delicious dishes. While eating, she heard the soft music around her, like a harp accompanying a numerous choir. She heard it, but she could not see it. The whole day she was alone, only accompanied by the voices. But somehow, she knew her husband would come at night, and so it was. When she felt he was close to her and heard his voice whispering sweetly in her ear, her fears disappeared. Without even seeing him, she was certain that he was not a monster, but the loving husband she had always been wishing for. The doubt in her heart. The following days passed in full joy, and Psyche could not remember any happier time of her life. However, day after day, she was feeling sadness that she could not see her husband. Moreover, she was left alone all day, and boredom filled her heart. Suddenly, she started missing her family. They must have been mourning for her, and she was alive and happy. This was not fair, and she didn't want her family to suffer. That night, she asked her mysterious husband to grant her a favor. She wanted her two sisters to come up at the palace and make sure that she was fine. That would be a comfort for her old parents. At first, her husband refused, but when Psyche turned out too sad, he told her, "Okay, I will allow your sisters to come up here, but I am warning you, do not let them influence you. If they do, you will destroy our relationship and suffer a lot." Next day, her two sisters, carried by the wind, they come up to Psyche. They were all happy to see each other and cried in happiness. However, when they entered the palace, the two older sisters were amazed by all those magnificent treasures. During dinner, they heard the wonderful music and drank the most delicious of wines. Envy was flourishing in their heart, and an irresistible curiosity to know the owner of such magnificence, the husband of Psyche. They kept asking the poor girl questions on her husband, his look and occupation. Psyche just said that he was a young hunter. But they didn't believe her, of course. Could a simple hunter be so rich? He must be a prince or even a god, they thought. The two sisters knew that compared to Psyche, their own wealth and happiness were nothing at all, and in total jealousy, they made a plan to hurt their sister. When they were saying goodbye, the two evil women told Psyche that her husband must be the awful snake that the oracle of Delphi had told her husband. That is why he doesn't allow you to see him, because he knows that if you see him, you will disgust in his sight and leave him forever. Oh, poor Psyche, how can you sleep with such a horrible creature? The betrayal part. From that day on, Psyche could think of nothing else but these words. Her sisters must be right. Why doesn't he come to me in the day? Why doesn't he allow me to see him? Why is he secret? Why hasn't he ever told me about his life? These thoughts were puzzling Psyche for many days long. He must be hiding something horrible, and that is why he does not want me to be seen in the daylight. I must find out. Tonight, when he falls to deep sleep, I will light a candle to see him. If he is a snake, I will kill him. Otherwise, I will turn the candle off and go happily to sleep. He had taken her decision, forgetting all about her husband's warning. Indeed, that night, when her husband fell asleep peacefully, she took courage and lit the candle. Walking on her toes, she approached the bed and she felt a deep relief. The light did not show a monster, but a most beautiful of men. Ashamed by her madness and little confidence, Psyche fell down on her knees and thanked God for his happiness. But while he was leaning on him, a drop of oil fell from the candle on the back of that handsome young man. He woke up in pain and saw the light. He looked her at the eyes and, facing Psyche's distrust, he left their bedroom without uttering a single word. Psyche immediately ran after her husband. It was dark and she could not see him, but could hear his heartbroken voice. Love cannot live without trust. Those were his last words before flying to the dark sky. The God of love, she thought. He was my husband and I did not trust him. She cried and cried for days, and then she decided to do anything to gain her back. She would look everywhere for him and she would prove her love. Without knowing what else to do, she went to the temple of Aphrodite and prayed to the goddess. She asked Aphrodite to speak to her son and persuade him to get Psyche back. Aphrodite had not, of course, overcome her jealousy for Psyche and so wanted her revenge. She told the young girl that she needed to be completely sure that Psyche was the appropriate wife of her son. Therefore, Psyche should accomplish 3 tasks to prove her skills. If she failed in even one of these tasks, Cupid would be lost forever. Psyche agreed. All is well that ends well. At this crucial moment, the gods who were watching this wrongdoing all this time decided to take up action. They sent Hermes, the messenger god, to narrate Cupid all the misfortunes that his wife was going through. Cupid was touched and this healed the wound of betrayal. He left his room and found Psyche exhausted in his mother's garden. From that moment on, Cupid and Psyche lived happily together in a lovely palace, which was always full of roses and other flowers. Psyche persuaded Cupid to forgive his mother for what she had made her suffer. As a wedding gift, Zeus made Psyche immortal and allowed her to taste ambrosia, the drink of the gods. Even Aphrodite was happy because, now that Psyche was living in the sky with her husband, men on earth had forgotten all about her and were again worshipping the true goddess of beauty. So that ends the story of Cupid and Psyche. I hope you enjoyed the story. But before we totally end this session, let's go deeper on the passages being implied in the story. So first, let's go on the plot and themes present in the story. So the summary of the story is none other than Cupid and Psyche is a tale of love, where one's love is a craving worth wandering, venturing, and sacrificing for. So the themes present are love and trust, which says there by Cupid that love cannot exist where trust doesn't. Second is jealousy, the extensive amount of power from jealousy. And third one, selfishness. Psyche starts as not so selfish, but changes to a selfish character to seek Cupid for herself and to steal Persephone's beauty. So let's have some important information here. Human motives to create myth. To show that human imperfectness can be put aside and fixed for what you want. Second, love can bring the biggest joys. Third one, follow your goals and never stop going. Now let's proceed on what is being revealed on the Greek culture in the story. First, it is so obvious that love is complicated but a great motivator. Another, women are people that should be seen as beautiful but dangerous. And lastly, trust is something earned, not taken. So I believe this is not just applicable for the Greek culture, but most of us, especially us in Filipino, I believe that these also exist or we also practice this culture. So what is the role of fate, destiny, free will, and prophecies that is being explained in the story? First, a prophecy by an oracle of Apollo said that Psyche would marry a monster, but the role of free will gave Psyche Cupid as her husband. And lastly, the destiny of Psyche was supposed to be tragic, but when successful, the jealousy factor arose. Now, let's move on to the symbols. A butterfly, an uneasy and hard to explain change in a prison completely. A dog, always chasing their tails until they succeed at getting it. And a dog and a cat, seen as don't belong together, but finds a way to make it work no matter what people say against them in the case. What a meaningful message it is. And lastly, how does the story relate today? First, love isn't as smooth as process. It has its ups and downs, but most of the time, in the end, love has found its way to heal something rough back to smooth. Another, never give up what you believe in. A goal is always blocked by obstacles, and every time you fall down, you just have to get back up. It's your life, there's no backing down. In a Disney princess, Cinderella, two jealous sisters. In the Beauty and the Beast, a monster they couldn't see but loved. Sleeping Beauty, curiosity killed the cat. So those three Disney stories are serves as an inspiration by the story of Cupid and Psyche. And to the story of Romeo and Juliet, how family limitations couldn't stop what the heart and guts said to do first and foremost for land. And that's all for today. Hope that you have learned something which you can apply in your daily living.